my name is Quentin Walston. Welcome to another jazz video. Today we're talking about jazz chords, those rich, lush, colorful chords that pianists and guitarists and organ players and the like use when they play jazz songs. To understand these, we're going to look through a few different concepts. We're going to start with triads. These are the core notes of any jazz chord. We're going to move on to extensions and how jazz musicians can modify or alter them. Then we're going to look at inversions in voice leading and how voice leading actually goes back and uses inversions. We're going to wrap this up by looking at passing chords, some of the most complex ways that jazz musicians implement the chords that we're covering today. So let's dive right in. So let's look at the building blocks of jazz chords. Now these are called triads. Triads are prevalent in all Western music and they're really based in classical music. They're three-note chords all separated by a third. So triads like C major are three notes all separated by a third. Now there's a variety of triads. There's major, minor, diminished, augmented. They're the different combinations you can have of your thirds. Now, understanding triads is really necessary to grasping jazz harmony in its fullest, because jazz harmony is based on triads. And what jazz musicians do is they add more notes onto those triads, and we call these extra notes extensions. So if you have 1, 3, 5, these basic notes of a triad, if I add on more notes, I'll get extensions. So here's my bass triad. If I add on a new note, a third above, I get a seventh. If I add on a new note, a third above, I get a ninth. We call them sevenths and ninths because of their relationship to the root. So a seventh above, a ninth above, an 11th above, a 13th above, so on and so forth. So these are the framework and the basic understanding of extensions in chords. Now, jazz musicians will sometimes modify these extensions. They will raise or lower them, making them sharp nines and flat 13s and flat 5s, and that's to just create a little bit more tension in the chord. So a G9 could become a G flat 9, or a G sharp 5 sharp 9. You're just creating more tension in the chord. Listen to this 2-5-1, this D minor 7, G7, C7, first without altered extensions, and then with altered extensions. So here's without. Really nice, really pretty. Here it is with a little bit more tension from my altered extensions. So we hear just a little bit more tension is in there due to my sharp 9s and my flat 5s and all that fun stuff. So jazz musicians love modifying these chords, giving them extra color through the sharp 5s and the flat 9s and all that modifying of extensions. Jazz musicians always are using different inversions of chords. An inversion is simply reordering the notes of the chord. So if we go back to triads, a C major chord could be spelled C-E-G, E-G-C, or G-C-E. It's all still C major, I've just changed up the order of the chords. Now this applies to jazz chords. We don't always have to play them in root position. We can spread out those notes to make a much more open sound. So why do we use inversions? One reason is just to have a different way of playing that chord, a different color, maybe higher or lower. But it really comes down to voice leading and how we use these inversions in a chord progression. A chord progression being a series of chords. If I use good inversions, I can lead from one chord to another in a really beautiful way. And this would be to avoid jumping around. Something like that kind of jumping around can be avoided if I have really nice chords that are inverted in a way that they would lead to one another. So that's a really helpful reason we learn voice leading. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is passing chords. Passing chords is kind of a combination of the things that we've talked about so far. You have your inversions and your voice leading, your extensions and your altered extensions like sharp fives and flat nines and all of that. And what passing chords do is they bridge between the chords in a chord progression. And it's really the most complex way that a jazz chord player can add in variety and add in a little bit more spice and nuance to their playing. So like I said, it's bridging between one chord and another. So it could be something like this. That's just a diminished chord taking me from one minor chord to another chord, or it could be approaching a chord from above or below via half step. So something like that, where I'm leading into all of my chords by a half step. Now there's a great variety of ways that jazz musicians can do this. They can add in passing chords as substitutions to other progressions, and the list kind of goes on and on. So depending on what player, they will use certain devices that sound really good to them. So this, I hope, is a great introduction to what is happening in jazz harmony. I hope that you learned a lot. I would encourage you to listen to some of the players that I have here recommended. These are masters of jazz harmony, and I think you'll find a lot of value really listening and studying to what they're doing. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy our other videos in this series. My name is Quentin Walston, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.